Hi, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Alex Ekhup, faculty from Tata Institute of Social Science, School of Social Work. Today, we are going to talk on a subject entitled The Lived Struggles of Tribe and Adivasis. This course comes under the subject History and Philosophy of Social Work. Basically, this course will help us to understand tribes and Adivasis and what kind of social work that social workers need to do in this area. What are the theories that we need to take forward as social workers in this area? What are the things that we need to know about tribe and Adivasis when we have to work with them in the field? So basically, this course asks three fundamental questions. Number one, what do we know about tribes and Adivasis in India? Now, tribes or Adivasis in India is a huge population. It extends right from the northeast to the west of the whole country, and generally they are located within two regions broadly divided, which generally is understood as the northeast region and the peninsular region. And the second thing, why and what do we need to learn from them? If we have to work with them, we need to know them first. We need to understand them first. Then only we would be able to do something with them. That is very fundamental for us before we venture into the field. The third question, what could we do to make their life better? That's an area of social work intervention. As social workers, when we are placed in tribal areas, when we have to work with tribes, scheduled tribes, what have we to do? What kind of projects that we need to carry forward to empower them? What kind of community works should we do to empower them? These are the three important questions which are asked in this course. And these questions, in fact, give you the objective of this course. That is, this course will teach us about tribes and Adivasis, first of all. And secondly, it will also tell us why and what do we need to learn from them as social workers. And thirdly, what kind of work can we do in this area? These are the three important questions and objectives of the course. Now, before going into the course in specific, let us begin by understanding what does it mean by lived struggle of Adivasis. Now, for Adivasis, life and the world around is realized through a struggle. It means that they live their life and struggle is a part of it. Struggle is a part of that life. In fact, life existence itself is a struggle that precedes all things that style life. You know, they struggle day to day to live within their land, to protect their land, to live within the notion of the land that they hold, to live within their worldviews and their cultures. And also they struggle to occupy a point of view without being assimilated and displaced. In fact, this is very fundamental when you are looking at tribes, because being a minority cultural group, they are likely to be assimilated, they are likely to be displaced if situations are not understood and cared for. And in fact, this is one of the main struggles that the Adivasis and tribes in India had gone through in the history. These struggles manifest in their daily lives, in their cultural processes, in their songs, in their dance, in their work, in their livelihood, in the way they understood this world, their worldviews, their beliefs, their aspirations. These struggles, they are there. They are a very fundamental part of their life. This course in specific engages the student at 3 levels. Number 1, tribal Adivasi societies, concepts and frames. Number 2, the worldviews. Here it is a tribal philosophy. Third, context and lived struggles. Now, let's go through these points one by one. The first point, tribe Adivasi societies, concepts and frames. A student who is going to work among tribes, what are the concepts and frames that he or she needs to know? What are the concepts and theories that he or she needs to learn before he ventures into the field? In the earlier periods in tribal studies, that is in social science, either in anthropology or social anthropology, particularly from 1940s, tribes were referred to as segmented societies broadly within colonial approach. This approach focused on civilizing the so-called primitive tribes. Since 1960s, emphasis came on understanding them as dynamic clan-based societies as different from contract societies. And in fact, during this time in the Indian context, there was heavy debate on understanding tribe from 2 perspectives, that is assimilation and isolation. There were a group of thinkers, philosophers, who considered that tribe needs to be assimilated into the mainstream society. And there were also other scholars, policymakers, administrators, who thought that tribes should remain where they are, culturally and politically. However, our state adopted the policy of integration, and thus they were categorized as scheduled tribes in our constitution. According to Census 2011, scheduled tribes constitute 8.6%, 104 million of the total population in India. Of this, around 83% belong to the eastern, central and western belt of our country, and around 12% inhabit in the northeastern states. These are the 2 major regions where tribes, Adivasis, inhabit. The recent empirical studies and analysis indicates issues and problems faced by the tribes and Adivasis today. Towards this, in fact, the latest government high-level committee report 2014, apart from giving detailed picture of tribal reality, indicates a situation of what it terms adverse inclusion, when especially viewed from a political economy of development. meaning when tribes were integrated into the state, into the constitution, there was actually displacement, here referred to as adverse inclusion. Now let's come to the second point, that is worldview philosophy, some important features. In harmony with nature, tribes are closely related to nature and its environment. Tribal life revolves around different seasons and different festivals and reflects a closeness to nature. For example, Sarul is celebrated to mark the arrival of the new season and also the marriage between the earth and sun. The forest and land are considered as the provider of their livelihood. It upholds their worldview, culture, and identity. Original settlers. Experience of tribes Adivasis indicate they are the first settlers in this region. Their forefathers came to this land centuries back, cleared the jungles and made the land cultivable. The land held by original settlers among the Urans is known as Buihari land, and Bundas referred to it as Kudkati land. The tribal communities have collective ownership. This is one of the fundamental features of tribes, where collective ownership of the community is very important. There is no private ownership here. The community owns the land and the community cultivates it and uses it in their own culture and customs. And that's why the land belongs to the people, and the chief or the village head is only the guardian. And in that sense, the people have only usufruct right. They can use the land, they can cultivate it, but they cannot have the land as their private property. Self-governing system. Another important aspect of tribal social structure is that they are self-governing entities. They have within them a local self-governance in place. In fact, this self-governance system is an intrinsic part of the social and political structure. Every tribal village is distinctive by this local self-governance. They govern themselves with their own customary practices from village to village. Diversity and uniqueness. If we have to look at the tribal reality, diversity and uniqueness are two important aspects that we observe. This social world has features of multiplicity, multiple cultures, multiple villages. In that sense, they are heterogeneous societies by lived experience, and which means they uphold principle of diversity and respect for other human societies. There is a possibility of coexistence between villages, communities, cultural groups. Their experience, in fact, suggests that we should listen and dialogue, which are commonly seen as people sit around the fire in the villages and they talk and comprehend and communicate, and they understand life and live life in that way. Political subjecthood. Tribal societies, in that sense, are political entities. Their struggle shows that they are political and is closely linked to self-rule, self-determination. They are able to define themselves. They have their self-governing body. The daily struggle, in fact, is a survival politics for them. And this politics, there is a winning and losing. And the dynamics of lived experiences in their context generate strategic thinking where they have to play that politics of survival. This dynamicity of the lived becomes a source of their political power to survive. Mind you, this is not opportunism, but a survival politics. Sociality, reciprocity, and respect for others. Again, if you look at tribal societies, they are fundamentally founded on sociality. Sociality here we mean the social. There, the fundamental reality is social. And if the fundamental reality is the social, then definitely relations, reciprocity, respect for others becomes important. The social relationship of tribal communities, in fact, is defined by reciprocity, trust, and respect. Their relationship is based on reciprocal frame where there is an element of respect and trust for the other. The barter system of the earlier times, in fact, explains this reality. People, villages used to exchange goods, and basically that is governed by sociality, that respect and that kind of relationship that is there in human society. Open communication. If you look at the inter-community relationship among tribes, open communication is very fundamental. The affairs of the community are run on open communications. People come, everyone is invited there. In fact, the society works on listening with open mind and takes grounded self into confidence. It safeguards dynamic social processes and challenges dominating communications. The existence of open communication implies sociality that upholds again diversities. There is a constant negotiation in open communication channel. Consensus and participatory. The lived experience of tribes and Adivasi suggest consensus meaning making process. They are governed by consensual politics. The whole affairs, the whole politics in a tribal village is governed by consensus. The affairs of the community are run on consensus. The consensus, in fact, defines the rationality and civility. This is vividly visible in the self-governing process in the villages. The third point, context and lived struggles. The day-to-day lived struggles of tribe and Adivasi in the event of the formation of state highlight important aspects of tribal society, state, and governance. This can be broadly discussed under the following reasons as given below. A. Peninsular region. B. Northeast region. A. Peninsular region. In the post-colonial period, this region came under the 5th schedule of the Constitution. This schedule focused on securing protection and development for the Adivasis. In fact, in 1996, Panchayat's Extension to Scheduled Areas Act has been enacted in many parts of this region to bring community empowerment. In this act, The Gram Sabhas, the village authorities are empowered to run the villages. They are the highest authority who will make decision when it comes to the politics and the governance of their own village. Some of the important aspects that we learn from the struggles of Adivasis. First, political struggle for autonomy. If we look at their struggles, their struggle is of political, it is of autonomy. This can be in fact observed from the idea of creating three separate states for tribes inhabiting in India, such as Jharkhand, Gondwana and Bhilistan, by the time British were about to leave. The first region became a state, Jharkhand, on 15th November 2000. The Gondwana comprised of a Gond concentrated regions in Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Maharashtra and Andhra Pradesh, and Bhilistan comprised of the Bhil concentrated areas in Gujarat, MP, Rajasthan and Maharashtra. Their agrarian rights. If we look at the history as written, we have various movements such as Coal Insurrection 1831 to 32, Santal Hul 1854 to 55, Sardar Movement 1860 to 95, Birsa Ulgulan 1895 to 1900 and Tana Bhagat Movement 1915-17. These movements are viewed as agrarian and forest based movements. These movements resisted the British policy of subjugating the tribal areas through various regulations and through putting in regulations wherein the zamindars and Malilanders would take upper hand in these tribal areas. Cultural rights and customary practices. Realization of their cultural rights came as a reaction to the realization of cultural loss among them. As a response, in fact, they started a movement where they begin to revive their cultural norms and practices to maintain solidarity within the group. The traditional governing system such as Parha among the Urans, Manki Munda among the Mundas, Manji Parganet among the Santals, Dokloso among the Kharyas, which had almost died by the time the British left, were revived again. Marriage also came to be restricted within the community. Besides, there was also realization of creating own script to bring community bonding across this region. Land, forest and water. Protection of the land, water and forest is very fundamental to tribe. And in fact, they started to realize about protecting their land, water and forest when they begin to see the projects of resource extraction taking place in their region. Resource extraction, which comes with the development projects, led to destruction of their land, water and forest, and simultaneously caused displacement of people and livelihood. During this time, various resistance movements emerged. B. The Northeastern region. The tribal areas in the Northeast region were usually referred to as the backward tracts and or the unadministered tracts based on basic framework of British policy as laid out in the Government of India Act 1919 and the Government of India Act 1935, this area was categorized as excluded or partially excluded area. In the post-independence, the 6th schedule, the hill councils and other specific regulations have been put in place. Here, regulations have focused on political and administration within the perspective of autonomy, so that the tribes could govern themselves and administer themselves in their own culture and customary practices. If we look at the reality of the tribes in the Northeast, there are certain things that we learn from them. First, embedded ethnic life world. Observing on the life of the tribes in the Northeast, it indicates that tribal reality is embedded in the life world of social realities. Again, here, the fundamental or the foundation of reality is the social. The worldview becomes the epistemological premise for understanding this world and also life on this earth and after death. The objectivity of the social reality is confirmed through its ability to exert influence in the mind of the collectives. Secondly, we learn about the nations and ethnicities. Articulations of tribes along nationhood, especially in the context of Northeast, dates back to colonial period. Here, nation refers to people with specific history, culture, and land who have been here before the coming of the state. In that sense, ethnicity in this context is closely related to the assertion for recognition of history, culture, and territory, in fact, a homeland. And lastly, we learn that customary rights, self-determination, and political economy are fundamental aspects of tribal reality. India, as a principle, recognizes unity in diversity, a multicultural perspective. The inclusion of various legal and administrative systems with regard to the scheduled tribes, especially in the Northeast, paves a way for cultural diversity. In this context, in fact, the Constitution has recognized the essence of their struggles that centers around customary rights, self-determination, and political economy. They represent self-sustaining, self-balancing, self-reliant, and self-adjusting societies. In fact, we have to know that self-rule is fundamental to their very survival. Thank you very much. The references and the questions for learning are attached